Hey, guess where I'm at? You're not going to guess this one either. I am back at Coastal Coffee Roasters and I have a very special guest. And yes, I'm outside. And yes, it's freezing. But I have someone good in the hot seat. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and we're going to go from there.
Hey, I'm Trooper Bob with ABC News 4, the traffic safety expert. Yes, we're in the cold, and two penguins just walked by right before this interview, but it's okay because we're here for Miss Julie here.
And my hands are freezing and I'll probably drop the video camera while we're talking because they have icicles because I have to pick the coldest day of the week to come here. All right, Super Bob, I have you here for a lot of reasons. I really need you to go back in your lifetime because you have lived so many different lives and you have so many stories. Can you give us like a little idea for people who have no idea or maybe new to the area and they haven't met you yet? Because to me, and I know a lot of y'all, that this is our Lowcountry legend here. We have so many of them, and he's one of them for sure. So can you give us a little insight about your life?
Sure, my mom and dad are from Hungary. My dad was born in Kishrada, Hungary. That's about a couple miles from Ukraine. I visit there once or twice a year. And my mom was born in Pécs, near Croatia. And they escaped Hungary um, and ended up eventually in a refugee camp in Baden, Austria. And I was born in a refugee camp. We stayed there for several months, actually a little over a year, and then eventually came to the United States with literally two suitcases and 500 bucks. Ended up in Fairfield, Connecticut. A short time later, a church took us in by the name of Calvary United Church of Christ in Fairfield, Connecticut, and we lived in this little three-room house behind the church. In exchange for living there, we had to clean the church after every service. We had to set the church up. We had to cut the grass, take care of the grounds, and we did that for 8 years of my life before we bought this old, what looked like an abandoned house. We fixed it up room by room, and that's where I lived until I joined the Navy.
Wow, that's really something, to come here, your parents having nothing. And so when you did that, okay, then you went into the Navy. How long were you there?
Yeah, I want to go back just a little bit. I was a carpenter. After high school, I wanted to be a carpenter. So I was doing woodwork. My dad introduced me to this guy. He didn't really know, but he introduced me to him because he was a carpenter. So I went to work for him, and a couple months later, he was gone. He stole all the tools, took money out of the bank. He was gone. I had no job. I'm 18 years old. I have nothing to do. I don't want to sit here hanging around trying to find a job on a street corner or at a gas station somewhere. I want to do something productive with my life. I was ready to go. I was ready to run, and so I joined the Navy that day, and I signed up for 4 years. And the recruiter told me that after some testing, he said you're going to leave 2 days after Christmas in 1989. And I went home and told my mom, I joined the Navy, and she was like, "What did you do?" It was funny because after high school, when I graduated, I sat at the kitchen table and I was looking at my high school diploma and I was like, "Mom, I don't have to go to school Monday. Like I can't believe I'm not." She goes, "Yeah, you don't have to go to school, but I need $400 a month." I was like, "For what?" She's like, "Well, you're gonna eat my food. You're gonna use electricity. You're gonna use lights, all this stuff." She goes, "Nothing in the world is free, son. I need $400 a month," and I paid my mom $400 a month until I went into the Navy.
See, we all need that. I mean, more and more of that,
Tough love.
tough love, tough love. Yeah, because I think we give our kids a pass. We don't really do that anymore. I think that that's really good. That it helps the development. Now, you went into the military. So, how long were you there?
So I was in the Navy for 4 years total. After boot camp, they sent me to. I went home for 2 weeks. They had this program back then that you could work with the local recruiter for 2 weeks, and they won't charge you your vacation, your leave, they called it. So I did that and came to Charleston, and you had this wish list in boot camp. So I was like, I want to go to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, anywhere close to Connecticut. And and one of them was Charleston, South Carolina, because I remember looking at this big map. I'm like, all right, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Savannah. I'm good in that area. So they gave me Charleston. I was here just for a short time and went straight to the Persian Gulf for Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. And we got extended there. So I did 6 months plus another 2 months there. Been around the world. I was stationed here in Charleston for 4 years, but really I was never in Charleston for 4 years straight. It was always we were in for a week, out for 3 weeks. We were always somewhere in the world. And after those 4 years, I said, I'm really tired of traveling. I was 21 years old. I said, I just want to stay in one spot. So I left the Navy with no job, just a sea bag. And if you ever been to a Navy pier, it's about the length of a football field. And I remember walking all the way to the end of the pier. And I felt like God put his hand on my head and said, I want you to be a policeman. So I put in applications everywhere you can imagine, even Northwoods Mall to be a security guard. And they said no. They said, you're only 21 years old. You don't have any law enforcement experience. You don't have the background. Eventually, the only agency to really hire me to be a full-fledged law enforcement officer was the South Carolina Highway Patrol. I went for some testing. They gave me a letter, and in the letter said you're going to make $19,000 a year, which back then it wasn't nothing either then, but I didn't care. I was just happy to have a job. And in the letter they said you have to show up with a pair of running shoes and a pillow. So I showed up in Columbia at the academy, a pair of running shoes and pillow. I looked at the stage. I said, I think every day you should set a goal to do something every day. But then I set the goal when I looked at the stage. I said, they gave me a job when nobody else gave me a job. So they have my loyalty. I'm going to give them 25 years and I'm going to try to make lieutenant. And by the grace of God, I was able to do both in 25 years. And then I retired. And people were like, what are you doing? You could still stay here and make rank. And I was checked out. I was done. That was my goal. I achieved my goal and I just wanted to do something else.
Okay, so that's how I know you, Trooper Bob. And I know you told me this off camera, but I want you to tell the story again because I think it's kind of really cool how you got your name.
So in 2007, I applied to be in I was actually asked, but then I was asked to be in the Public Information Officer Unit. They called it the Community Relations Officer Unit. So I did that for, hello, people saying hello. So I was a spokesperson for the Charleston area, and we had a recorded media line. So I would leave information from a collision or incident on that media line and tell them exactly what happened, name of the passengers, all this other stuff, or name of the driver, description of the vehicle, and leave that. And I would say, started off with, this is Lance Corporal Bob Beres with the South Carolina Highway Patrol. And so the next day in the paper, it's Lance Corporal Bob Beres, like the beer you drink, or the bear in the woods, or they'd spell my name Berris or Bere. So I have a Hungarian last name. It's Beres in Hungarian. So it was spelled so many different ways for about a month. And I was like, you know what? Just call me Trooper Bob. Let's keep it simple like that. And that's how that happened. And it stuck to people.
And it's still stuck. No matter what you do in your life, everybody's going to go, hey, Trooper Bob.
Oh, even my mom. When my mom was alive, I would eat with my mom every Thursday. So I'd ring the doorbell. She's like, Trooper Bob. I was like, Mom, I'm your son. I'm Robert. I'm your son. But she still insisted on calling me Trooper Bob.
Okay, so now we're going to fast forward again. So now you leave the Highway Patrol. Now what happens?
So I retired from the Highway Patrol. Actually, a big thing on social media is they wanted us on social media. And first, they wanted us on Twitter. I had to Google what Twitter was. I didn't even know what it was. So it had a good following on there. So I posted that. I thanked the state of South Carolina for allowing me to serve them for 25 years in law enforcement. And I was retiring. I was really going to go sit in my garage and do some woodworking projects. I was going to make furniture and do this and that. And I had some job offers that came to me, and one of them was with ABC News 4. So I actually flew up to Baltimore and met the owners of Sinclair, who own ABC News 4, and almost 200 other stations that are under that Sinclair umbrella. And the owner said, look, we're going to build you a car, and it's going to be the traffic tracker. And worked out a 3-year agreement with them, 3-year contract. So I did 3 years with them, did another 3 years, and just this past December, I signed a 5-year contract with ABC News 4.
Well, congratulations for that. Okay, so if people aren't familiar, tell them exactly what you do.
So it's pretty much traffic with Trooper Bob. That's what it is every morning. So I'm on ABC News 4, Good Morning Charleston. I provide you the traffic updates every 15 minutes, so right after weather. I give you the traffic, and so I have a vehicle.
Hold on.
And if you want to pan over to the vehicle, I have a vehicle.
Hold on. We're going to stop mid-interview. Hold on, Trooper Bob. I'll be right back. Look. Steven got an emoji with his hat on it. I like it. Okay.
So I love emojis, and that's why I have that on the car. So they built me this car, and it's basically a live studio. It's a studio on wheels, and this vehicle allows me to go to different places. So, for example, if there was a bad crash right in front of this restaurant, there aren't traffic cameras here to show you what happened. Pretty much other stations are going to show you a map with a red line saying the street's closed because there's a car that's overturned. But I actually take my car and drive to it and show you what happened. And my experience as being a trooper, I've investigated well over 3,000 collisions. I can show you the crash, see what the officers are doing, and tell you this is what's going on in the crash. This is when the roadway can probably be back open. I can tell you pretty much, depending on certain circumstances, I can tell you who was at fault in the crash, and tell you a little bit more information than other than roads closed for 2 hours. So this vehicle allows me to do that. I also go to flooded roadways. I go to fires. I go to shootings. Any kind of breaking news. So I really don't know where I'm going every morning until I wake up and look at my logs and look at the police logs, and then next thing you know, today I went to the airport because of the flights getting canceled and delayed. So I wanted to show you what traffic was like curbside at the airport, and I was able to do that because of this vehicle. And then I went to a reported structure fire on Rivers Avenue, so it allows me to do that.
What was the airport like?
You know, at 5:15, 5:30, it was pretty crowded because I think everyone's just trying to get there, hoping their flight wasn't going to be delayed or canceled. And we had several that were canceled this morning, and it was a lot better at 6:15 when I drove by there. But this is what I get to show you instead of just telling you. Going back to 2015, if you remember the 1,000-year flood, I was sitting in the Emergency Operations Center. So we have people dying from going around barricades and drowning, literally drowning, because they went around the barricades and took a chance. And so after the second or third or fourth person died, my boss was like, look, we need to come up with something else. I was like, look, we're showing them videos. I went and took videos of cars that were underwater. I went and took pictures. We're telling people not to do it. I don't know why, but they were still doing it. He's like, we got to come up with something else. So I was just looking at my phone and I saw these emojis. So I put the first emoji message together, and it was all emojis. It was like, if you go around a barricade, and it was a little emoji barricade, and you go into the water and there's a little wave, and, you know, police, fire, and EMS will have to come get you. And they had somebody with a bandaged head in the hospital and the EMS, and you know, it's not going to turn out really good for you. That's pretty much what the message said. That message got 150,000 interactions. And it reached 150,000 people. I was like, there must be something to this. So I kept using these emoji messages. It just kept blowing up. So one day, I went to, we had a meeting with Highway Safety, and I told them about what was going on. I said, can we please have a billboard that shows a car plus a beer equals police car, or beer plus car equals police car? And they're like, no, that's kid stuff. We're not going to do that. And so the next meeting, I showed them, like, this is what's going on. Like, look how it's people resonating with this thing. They're resonating to these messages. So I asked them for 3 billboards. And they're like, look, they called an advertising company. Eventually, the advertising company said, there must be something to this. So let's do it. So they bought 85 billboards. So he put them up. Within 2 days, I was doing interviews everywhere you can imagine, over the phone and going to TV stations. And the director of Highway Safety calls me, and he's like, hey, we're going to buy 85 more billboards. I'm like, oh, cool. We're also going to put it on icebox wraps at convenience stores, because if you're getting ice from a convenience store, what are you doing? You're putting it in your cooler to cool the beer down. Then they put it on gas pump handles, so when you're pumping your gas, you can see those messages. They put them on 5 million high school sporting event tickets throughout South Carolina. And we also include other messages like, don't text and drive, wear your seatbelt, don't speed, and they were all emojis. We filmed an emoji commercial. It took, from what I remember, it took like 6 or 7 hours to film just that 30-second commercial. I was actually sitting on a bucket holding a metal steering wheel that was about 2 feet long, and when they put it all together, I was in my little emoji car, and it came up to see a big car. But if you Google sober or slammer emoji, you'll see the commercial. It's 30 seconds, and that commercial actually won an Emmy.
But didn't they give it to you, like the Emmy?
Oh yeah, I went up. I was sitting there in Atlanta, and I was like 2 hours into the Emmy Awards, and this public safety announcement came up. The awards came up, and I remember putting my head in my hand because I was nervous, and we were against another award that Georgia had going on, and somebody else, because there was 3 of us. And I remember my head's in my hand, and they said the Emmy goes to Sober Slammer Emoji. I could not believe it. I was like, thank God. And I went up there, and the only thing I remember saying was I was thanking all the reporters and the people for wearing their safety vests when they're out there. Because I used to give reporters, mostly reporters, if I saw them on TV or saw them on the side of the road with their safety vest, I would always give a little safety emoji Emmy to them. And that's what I remember.
See that, isn't that something though, to have one person to have one idea and to believe in it, that it would make that much of an impact on everyone.
Do you know what sealed the deal for that? Because when I talked to Highway Safety about it, and they were like, well, they're kind of hesitant. That's a lot of money, advertising. It's a lot of money that goes into promoting stuff because you have to do it statewide. So I took my picture of the Bear plus car equals police car, and I showed my mother from Pitch Hungry. I said, Mom, what does this mean to you? She goes, that means if you drink and drive, the police will get you. I was like, if my mom can get this, think of the world can get this. How many people don't speak English here that can look up and see the billboard and say, you know what, I'm not going to drink and drive because the police will get you.
That's really inspiring. Okay, I have other questions for you. So all the stuff that you've done, what is your favorite part of, I guess, of all of that what you've done so far?
In my career, we used to keep track, and we did keep track of how many talks you've been to. I've been to Fort Jackson and talked to 6,000 soldiers at one time, and I've been to the post office where I talked to 12 people before work to give a safety talk. I've been to churches, civic groups. So I think my favorite out of everything is when I go talk to a group, regardless of how big the group is, and I tell you that I've been to all these crashes in my career, and I can tell you Bob Beres has never unbuckled a dead person. And I'll tell you about those messages, and I'll tell you about my experience on the patrol. And if something happened, I'll tell you it happened. If it didn't happen, I'm just breaking it down for you. Because I've been to these crashes. I've seen stuff I could write a book about that would change people's lives. But when I talk to you about the importance of wearing a seatbelt, you go home and you tell your family members, and I see you out in town or even here at the coffee place, you say, Bob, my uncle wore his seatbelt yesterday because I told him the message that you spread to us, and he had a truck flipped over, but he went to work the next day because he didn't get hurt, and it saved his life. I have to be a sideline reporter for our station for Friday Night Rivals football, and I went to a game in West Ashley or James Island. There was a city police officer there. This was in West Ashley. A city police officer. I always go thank the officers when I see them. And thank you for what they do. And I said, hey, thank you guys for being here tonight. And he goes, you came to the Citadel when I was a cadet there. I said, really? He goes, yeah, you did a safety talk for our group. I said, hello, how you doing? Good to see you. He said, you did a safety talk for our group. I said, oh, that's cool. He goes, after I heard your message, he says, I changed my major right after class to criminal justice, and I'm here today because I listened to your message. He goes, my parents wanted me to be an engineer because my grandfather was an engineer, something like that. He told me, and I'm like, you change your whole way of thinking and your career just because of my money. She said, yeah, and I'm here today. And people told me after I posted a picture of us, like he's like the top DUI guy in the state, and I'm proud of him.
Okay, Bob, where do you find like your inspiration and your drive and your dedication to do all this goodness? Because you do a lot of good. I mean, you have a big heart and you're got a passion for community. Where does that come from?
My parents, you know, we grew up with my dad always helping out everyone. My dad always helped everybody. And I'll never forget, my dad helped this deaf couple when we were growing up for years and years and years. He helped. These people had what I thought they didn't have anything. They lived in a 3-story apartment. To me, they looked poor. But my dad always helped them with the plumbing, anything wrong with their house. And when the gentleman died, the older gentleman died, years and years later, they gave my dad his pickup truck with a camper shell on it. I was like, Mom, they gave him the truck. She goes, yeah, but your dad always helped him, like never really charged him anything. But my dad, he could work on cars, he could work on a house, he can do everything because we didn't have money to pay anybody. So we did it was like trial and error. And 2 years ago I went back to Vermont because that's where we used to vacation. We used to go to this place called Mount Snow and the Mount Snow Lodge. In the camper of the truck that the pickup truck, it just had one door. It didn't have nothing, just like a place to lay down. And we didn't have money, but we would go to that hotel and park in the parking lot and sleep in the camper. And then the next night we had enough money to sleep one night in the hotel. So we spent 2 days and we did that for years and years and years. So I wanted to see that place. So I actually flew up to Connecticut and drove to Vermont to see this place we used to go to. It's still there. It's not a hotel anymore. It's pretty much shut down, but it brought back a lot of memories. But my parents just made do with what they had. And I remember playing with clothespins on the table with Matchbox cars. I didn't have cable growing up. I didn't have a VCR until I went into the Navy. We just didn't have a lot. My mom made $2 an hour when she came to this country. She walked, I'm going to say 2 miles to work. It wasn't any more than that, but it wasn't any less. She made $2 an hour, and her job was to make the inside of the light bulb, the little filament inside of the light bulb, the little wires you see. That was her job to put all that together. And she did it by hand. She worked 20 years, no benefits, no nothing. The company shut down and went to Texas. She didn't want to go to Texas. She didn't have nothing, no nothing. But that's what she did. But my mom never complained. If I told my mom today, Mom, it's cold outside, she said, well, put a jacket on. Like, she always had something else she always looked at the brighter side. Always looked at the brighter side. Remember, the carpenter stole the tools. I didn't have a job. Remember, I didn't have a job. I had to get a job, and that's what put me in the Navy. When I left the Navy, I didn't have a job, and that's why I went to the Highway Patrol. So if you're going to step forward and move into something, a profession, you have to give 100%. Even when I was at the academy, I knew I didn't have a job to go back to, so I had to study. I had to do my best. I had to pass these tests they gave us every week. I always say, help those that you can. Don't enable people, but help people when you can. I like doing random acts of kindness. That's what I always do that. It makes me feel good, and no one's expecting it. No one even knows you're going to do it. Um, Work hard. I always say if you're 20 minutes early, you're late. That's how we were on the Highway Patrol. That's my pet peeve. I always try to be early. Today, it's like everyone wants to text you, or they want to. Nobody wants to shake your hand and say hello. Nobody wants to tap you on the back and say, how you doing today? Be kind. Be kind to everybody. If you look at my social media posts, every day I always post. I love boats, so I always post pictures of boats or something happy and go, happy Monday, happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday. I always want to inspire someone. Start your day out with a smile. I always say the world without laughter is like a day without sunshine. or a day without laughter is like a day without sunshine. I always say expect nothing. Like don't expect something from somebody. If you want something, you have to go work for it. Um, Set goals every day. When you wake up, what do I want to do today? Today I set a goal for being here at this interview, so I knew I had to do something today. But every day should have a purpose for you. If not, it's just another day that's gone by. Look, we're not promised tomorrow. So each day I wake up, I always give thanks. And I don't know how spiritual anybody is, but I always give thanks to the good Lord because He gave me a day to wake up, and whatever the world gives me today, I'm going to take. I'm going to deal with it. But just I'm 54 years old. I just turned 54 not too long ago. But how many people didn't make it this far? Do your best every day. Put in 8 hours of work. If you work 8 hours, put in 8 hours of work. Don't try to cheat the system, and just be a good person. Just do good things.
Okay, I need to know this. What is next for you in your life? What do you need to do next on your list?
I like traveling. Right now, I'm committed to being at ABC News 4 for 5 years. So we'll see what happens after that. But my long-term goal, I see myself possibly living in Hungary for a couple months, and during the good seasons, the good weather. You know what's funny? It's like, you know what we have here. I go back to visit my relatives. I help feed my cousins like 70 chickens. I'm hanging out my clothes on clothespins in the backyard. I like dealing with the garden. I live a boring life, trust me. But I listen to a garden show every Sunday morning from 8 to 9. And it's from the AM station where I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I have nice plants at home. And even my sister comes over and says, how do you get this so great? I said, I listen to a garden show. Like this, I talk to my plants too. I like to, they're growing, living things. So I do, that's what I do. But happiness for me is taking vacations to visit my relatives in Hungary.
Okay, my last question to you. How do you want to be remembered?
People, they're not, after a while, they're not going to remember me. But they're going to remember, hey, there was a guy that drove around and gave traffic reports. That's what they're going to remember. But I remember that guy, I don't know his name, but he also told me to leave more distance between me and the vehicle in front of me. He always told me to use my signal. He always said, wear your seatbelt. So that's how I want to be remembered. Maybe by a safety message, but they'll forget your name. They ain't going to remember you, but they'll remember how and what you said impacted them and their family.
Okay, I know a good way to end this. So I just asked you, how do you want to be remembered? What emojis would I use?
Just a smiley face, the same one that's on my car. Smiley face emoji. Be happy. My mom always said, son, be happy. And I was like, Mom, I'm happy. What? I don't look miserable. Like, you tell me all the time. You act like I'm walking around with my head down all the time. She goes, son, always keep smiling. Be happy. She always said, keep smiling, be happy. And God's honest truth. The other day, I was driving, and if we could, it's on the ABC News 4 reel because I did it during my live hit. So I'm driving down Dorchester Road, going up towards Summerville, and I look up, and there's this huge dump truck in front of me, and it says, keep smiling on the tailgate. And I was like, that's my mom thinking of me. How in the world is that phrase on a dump truck when my mom would say it my whole life? Keep smiling or be happy. And my dad always said, be a good boy. Anytime I left the house, son, be a good boy.
Well, with that, Trooper Bob, I really appreciate your time. I mean, I could talk to you all day. You got some stories, and I might have to get you back and we'll do another segment because you do have a lot of good stories.
Thank you very much. And I'll end this the same way I end every traffic report. At the end of the show, I always say, make sure you buckle up. Don't be ejected from life. Make it a good day.
And with that, goodbye. And I hope you all have a good day. Be kind and spread some love. Bye.